For the next topic on the divine laws of Allah, we have Dr. Mohamed Abutaleb. And Dr. Mohamed Abutaleb serves as the Imam of the Islamic Association of Raleigh. He is a lifelong student of the Quran and Islamic Studies and pursued seminary training through the Cambridge Islamic College and As-Salam Institute in the UK. Dr. Mohamed also shares a love of science and reason and completed his PhD and master's degree in electrical engineering at MIT, along with degrees in physics and mathematics from the University of Maryland. Imam Abutaleb's greatest charge in life is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by being a good father, a good husband, and son. Without further ado, Dr. Mohamed Abutaleb.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما اللهم اشرح لنا صدورنا ويسر لنا أمورنا اللهم آمين. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has gathered us here for this conference to inshallah learn together, to grow together, and to develop together. I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to keep the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood strong between us inshallah and continue to grow and develop our communities. And I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the panelists that are here on the stage and the teachers and scholars that have come here alhamdulillah to share of their wisdom with us. Allah Azza wa Jalla bless them and their families for this sacrifice. Allahumma ameen. And I must tell you, of all of the topics that I was considering for this program, Allah Azza wa Jalla reward the program committee. This one in particular caught my eye. Because it's not an easy topic, as-sunan al-ilahiyya, that Allah Azza wa Jalla's divine and universal laws. And it's definitely not an easy topic on a full stomach. And as I'm looking down at my watch, it says 12:10 a.m. and I'm wondering how is anybody going to keep up, but I read it's still on Eastern time. So alhamdulillah, these are all sacrifices, but it's important really that we review this topic. Sheikh Mohamed Faqih, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, started to open our eyes because this topic is one that often is overlooked and is not emphasized in our curricula, and yet it is mentioned many times in the Holy Quran and it has been researched extensively by classical scholars and scholars of our day. And often, when looking at an abstract topic, it helps to have an example. So permit me to share with you a man who I think of when I think of this topic, as-sunan al-ilahiyya, the divine laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This man is not a person you would think would remind you of Allah Azza wa Jalla's divine laws. Because during a period of his life, and I'm sharing with you his story from his tongue, not my assessment of him, but by his own description of himself, he was as far from the deen as you could imagine. And once we were sharing a journey, helping some people in our community, and he told me, Muhammad, every single sin that could occur to your mind, I have done every single one of them. He told me everything that you imagine, all of the traps, all of the things, I've been to each one. And in these moments in my life, when he was distant from the deen, by his description, he says, I was supposed to feel so good. And for a moment, I might have felt a rush. I might feel that feeling that comes, that fleeting feeling when I'm doing something wrong. But then he said afterwards, I would be crushed with an emptiness in my heart. And I got more and more frustrated. Because he said that's not what they promised on TV. That's not what they promised among the cool kids at school in these groups. That's not what they promised in popular culture. He said, that gap in my heart, I never felt fullness until I felt a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahi, my brothers and sisters, I have interacted with people that have been Muslim, mashallah, for 60 and 70 years. And inshallah, they're good people. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate us all. And yet when you speak to them, you hear about Jannah, you hear about ibadah as a concept, as something abstract. This man on this journey, he hadn't been a practicing Muslim but for a year or two. But wallahi, when you hear him talk about Jannah, your heart feels inclined and really desires to make it. When you hear him talk about his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know instantly he's not talking about a concept. He's describing a reality. A reality that he lives in his life and that he's willing to give and invest and sacrifice for. In many ways, my brothers and sisters, I share this story with you because that was one of my first introductions to the power of this concept, the Sunan al-Ilahiyya, in life. Before this man knew the ayah in the Holy Quran, he felt it. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. Before he could express it, he felt it. That there was that emptiness, that lack of comfort, that lack of centrality and position that could not be filled until he was connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, the Sunan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah's divine universal laws, are mentioned a number of times in the Holy Quran. One of them comes in Surah Fatir, where also Quraysh is addressed to review their experience and their claims in light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws. And this starts in Surah Fatir, which is the 35th surah of the Holy Quran, verses number 42 and 43, where Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَأَقْسَمُوا بِاللَّهِ جَهْدَ أَيْمَانِهِمْ لَإِنْ جَاءَهُمْ نَذِيرٌ لَيَكُونُنَّ أَهْدَى مِنْ إِحْدَى الْأُمَمِ. That Quraysh, and the meaning is general, but the context is among the people of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Quraysh in specific. That they swore by Allah, the greatest of oaths, that if there came to them a warner, that they would be more guided than any of the previous nations. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ نَذِيرٌ مَا زَادَهُمْ إِلَّا نُفُورًا. So now when the warner came to them, meaning Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it did not increase them except in aversion. So they had kept claiming that we will be better than these prior nations, that we will be the most guided. And then when the affair came to pass, they went fleeing the other direction. Allah Azza wa Jal continues, istikbal fil ardi wa makra sayyi. Due to the arrogance in the land and evil plotting. وَلَا يَحِيقُ الْمَكْرُ السَّيِّئُ إِلَّا بِأَهْلِهِ. And evil plots will always rebound upon the plotters. Listen carefully. Those that plot evil, it will always rebound upon them. This is Allah's promise. This is Allah's promise. فَهَلْ يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا سُنَّةَ الْأَوَّلِينَ. So do they then expect that what will happen to them is any different than the nations that have come before. فَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا وَلَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَحْوِيلًا. And you will never find in the way of Allah any change, and you will never find in the way of Allah any alteration. So you see, my brothers and sisters, this address to Quraysh, and indeed broader to all people, with this claim, it challenged them to look at what happened to the nations before. To look at what befall people based on what they did. And that Quraysh, they may claim that they are selected because of their proximity to the Kaaba, because they are the most honorable of the Arabs, because. But the Quran challenged that ultimately they would be judged as all other human beings were judged, by the actions that they did and the good and the evil of them. Not who their father and mother was, or what their status among people were, or what their judgment of themselves is. And you see, that's part of the power of these divine universal laws. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws are established and firm and constant. We are familiar with this in Allah Azza wa Jall's natural laws in creation. We all think of this regularly. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. That we will show them our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it is made clear to them that it is the truth. So in our limited, imperfect descriptions of Allah's natural laws, Allah Azza wa Jalla has opened on some of the thinkers and the scientists and the scholars, theories such as gravity, such as some of the biological norms within us, such as some of our studies of the natural world. And these are human descriptions of Allah Azza wa Jalla's natural order and beauty and perfection in earth and in creation that is by His design and His creation subhanahu wa ta'ala. And similarly within our own selves as individuals, these miracles and this order governs us day in and day out, whether it's our physical bodies or our emotional responses, or the way we bring about change and the way we interact as societies. So we have to then extend this concept to understand that Allah Azza wa Jalla also has natural laws and divine universal laws throughout history, and how nations were treated, and how change is brought about, and what people must do in order to learn, in order to advocate for change, as Sheikh Mohamed Faqih was mentioning, in order to get out and do something that, as Umar ibn Khattab said to a man, that the sky does not rain gold and silver, so how we seek our livelihood. All of these things have law and order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places among the historical nations and among us. My brothers and sisters, I want you to pause for a moment and understand how profound a concept that is. In fact, how unique it is even among religions, even among the religions of Ahlul Kitab. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, ayahs number 111 to 112. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَقَالُوا لَن يَدْخُلَ الْجَنَّةَ إِلَّا مَنْ كَانَ هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارًا. And they claimed that none shall enter heaven except he who is a Jew or a Christian. Now pay attention carefully. These are labels. These are labels of people that you belong to this group or belong to that group. The Quran challenges this assertion. تِلْكَ أَمَانِيُّهُمْ قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. This is their wishful thinking. Let them bring proof. Say, bring your proof if you are among the truthful. I want you to pause for a moment so we can appreciate the great eloquence of the Holy Quran. If the speech that was to come was outside of the Quran, among the speech of human beings, what might you expect to be said next? This is the book of the Muslims. This is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the ummah of the Muslims, the ummah of the Prophet. And said if you are a Jew or a Christian, you'll enter Jannah. It says no. What are you expecting next? No, it's the Muslims. But notice, that's not the language that the Quran said. It didn't say no, the Muslims, as a label, as a group, as a belonging only. It said, بَلَى مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ. No, rather the one who submits himself, aslam, the verb form, sincerely, wholly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while excelling, while doing good, while seeking that ihsan. فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. So that person would have his reward secure with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is no fear upon them, nor shall they grieve, meaning that they would be from the people of heaven. Notice the shift in perspective. That it's not about a belonging that leads you to salvation, but it's about an action that makes a person worthy of being among those Muslims, the ones that's the submitters, if you will. And in Surah An-Nisa, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, لَيْسَ بِأَمَانِيِّكُمْ وَلَا أَمَانِيِّ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. That paradise is not obtained by your wishful thinking, and the believers are the ones that are addressed here, nor the wishful thinking of the people of the book. مَنْ يَعْمَلْ سُوءًا يُجْزَ بِهِ وَلَا يَجِدْ لَهُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلِيًّا وَلَا نَصِيرًا. Now look at the divine law that continues. Whomever does evil will be recompensed for it, and will not find besides Allah a protector nor a help. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِنَ الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ نَقِيرًا. And whomever does good works from men, that is, from males or females, and he is a believer, then they will enter Jannah and they will not be done the least bit of wrong. What power in these ayat to say that no imam, no sheikh has the convenience of being preoccupied with other status in terms of Jannah or hellfire because he has not yet secured his own seat. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla's laws are applied to everyone. You don't get to put on a robe or a hat or a title and feel secure from accountability before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What power that when we call to the values of this deen, we call people to practice based on Allah's revelation, not based on our human shortcomings in implementing it. So that perhaps the student might excel beyond the teacher, and the pupil might one day become stronger than those that were raising him. And the parent might raise a stronger believing young man or believing young woman than they themselves were able to be. It's the greatness of our deen and the greatness of a sound understanding of these universal laws. And my brothers and sisters, these are difficult times. And an understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's universal laws become all the more important in times of wrongdoing, in times of widespread sin, in times of oppression, globally contextualized or local. Because our deen enables us to live with the cards that we have been dealt in life, if you will, with the context we find ourselves in. Some of the Sahaba were, by our measures, absolutely multimillionaires and very rich. And they lived upright, righteous lives with all of that wealth. Other Sahaba never experienced immense wealth in their whole life. They never had access. But in that context of limited financial resources, they were still able to excel as believers. Our deen empowers us. And there are people today in America, read the book, Nickel and Dime, and wallahi, a fair criticism. Some of us live in such privilege that unless you come outside your bubble and see people that are stuck in minimum wage jobs and are literally systemically unable to build to the level that others are able to develop their careers, so that it's not just judged by the number of hours or the amount of skill, because they're already working 2 and 3 jobs, making ends meet. That's a tough situation. And that situation may not fully be in a person's power to control, to change. But our deen enables us to face such situation. Many people, when they stand for justice, when they work, they're able to see the fruits of their work. But some Sahaba, they died, and the fruits of their work came after their death when it was widespread. And Mecca, Fatha Mecca, and so on and so forth. The Quran talks about so many people that lived and enjoyed these fruits of work, but it talks about Ashab al-Ukhdud, who were a people that lived oppressed and died in oppression. But that's the power of being connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you look only at this dunya, there are things, my brothers and sisters, that are absolutely unfair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our brothers and sisters across the world that are suffering at the hands of injustice, the eastern and western reaches of the world. So many peoples that are constantly under this repression, and just holding on to their deen could be a struggle of a lifetime that enters them into Jannah. But even these people, when we understand these sunnah, we understand how to operate in the context that we're in. And I want to close with an uncomfortable question. And that's why we're here. We're not here to rehash what we already know. We're here to push the boundary together, to learn, to grow. So I want to ask you, as we learn from our speakers about more of these divine laws and how we can be agents of change, I want to ask you for a moment, what's your relationship with Allah's divine universal laws? What's your individual relationship with the Holy Quran, with the teachings of our religion? Do you feel an emotional heaviness about some of the teachings of our deen? Do you feel proud to be Muslim? Or do you sometimes feel the pressure to hide your Islam? A recent study shows that 1 in 6 young people actively hide their Islamic identity from their peers. Your co-workers know you're Muslim. Your classmates know you're Muslim. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying wear a shirt that says I'm a Muslim. I'm really asking, in our conduct, in our character, in our relationship with the Quran, do we make it a priority to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do, and to work through our questions, to work through our struggles, until we are more confident and stronger practicing Muslims? Because what I just said, it's not easy. What I just said, I have many shortcomings in it. What I just said, I'm not picking on you or picking on me. I'm trying to say, can we elevate to a higher level? Because Muslims today, we feel Islam is good, but day and night, we're bombarded with messages that Islam is bad. Islam is backwards, barbaric, evil. These are things that we're hearing day in and day out. And unaddressed, our mind starts pulling one way and our heart starts pulling the other. It's only through seeking that knowledge, asking those questions, and really building a functional relationship that inshallah we find that stronger practice. That really we find the courage and the power not to tell people that we're Muslim with our tongues, but to show them in action, in the way that we live the Quran, in the way that we live these great meanings. And remember, my brothers and sisters, that this deen is great, its concepts are great, its values are cohesive, the message of the Quran is powerful, and yet the greatness of an idea does not alleviate the need for people that will carry it and deliver it. So think throughout this weekend about how we can be agents of change, how we can carry that message to our people. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and benefit us, inshallah, and allow us to benefit those around us along with